morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Off in the S's podcast, focusing on the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. If you're new, well, so are we. We're ramping up for the 2022 IMSA season, doing a couple episodes here at the end of the 2021 season to get the little things ironed out, and I hope that you enjoy the ride and are going to follow along on this journey with us. Thanks for listening in, and today we are going to be hopping in to the Petit Le Mans that just went down about a little over a week ago, and as I'm sure you know, if you were able to see any of that race, man oh man, we were just treated to not only one of the best races of the season, but perhaps one of the best Petit Le Mans that we've ever seen. We saw championships won. We saw championships lost as well. We saw race wins go down to the final corners of the last lap, and you just could not ask for much better of a race there. But with that, there's a ton of things that we have to unpack from this 2021 edition of Petit Le Mans. So let's buckle up and let's go. It has been a busy couple of weeks in the world of IMSA as we saw the season wrap up, and we saw multiple stories break through about drivers and manufacturer changes for next season. But before the Petit Le Mans weekend, there was a bit of an announcement from NBC, and this has big implications for their coverage of IMSA in 2022. According to a Racer.com article, starting in 2022, IMSA will have all of its IMSA WeatherTech Championship events broadcast on NBC Network or USA Network. So this past season, we haven't been able to see all of them on the big networks, but starting in 2022, all of the WeatherTech Championship events will be broadcast on one of those two networks. There's going to be a total of 80 hours of broadcast, with 12 hours reserved for NBC alone at the 24. The rest of that race will be broadcast, of course, on USA Network, as well as Laguna Seca, CTMP, aka Mossport, and Petit Le Mans. Some sad news coming out of this is that Track Pass will no longer be available, and instead, any of the online coverage is going to be able to be found on Peacock, which is, to my understanding, that is NBC's streaming platform. Peacock is also going to carry the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge and IMSA Prototype Challenge races, which will bring the total number of broadcast hours in 2022 to 100. We will include a link in the show notes, which will outline for you where each race will be broadcast and where you're going to be able to find it, so you can plan accordingly. It is also still good to note that if you are outside of the United States, then IMSA Radio will still be available, as well as IMSA TV. It was the end of an era at Petit Le Mans for the Gtlm category, as they had their final race in IMSA competition at Road Atlanta. This is, of course, it's a bit sad to see this division go. It's been an iconic one. From the early days of IMSA and even before that in various forms. But over the history of GTLM in IMSA, there have been a total of 6 different manufacturers that have won races, including Dodge. In those early years, Ferrari, BMW, Ford, Porsche, and of course Chevrolet having all won races over that time span. And while it's gone, the heart of the series is still going to somewhat race on in 2022, as GTLM will be replaced by GTD Pro, where we will see some factory entries in that category to sort of replace GTLM a little bit, but still sad to see it go. We'll talk about some of those GTLM entries, of course, as the show goes on, but kind of the end of an era for an iconic category in IMSA at Road Atlanta. Paul Miller Racing is going to be parting ways with Lamborghini. This has been a long-standing partnership in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in that GTD category. They're parting ways after 6 years. And it was a very successful 6 years for this partnership that saw them take 6 race victories, including the 12 Hours of Sebring, the 2020 Daytona 24-hour. They saw 25 podiums over those 6 years as well, including 10 pole positions, manufacturers championships in 2018 and 2019, and then of course also that 2018 GTD Drivers Championship. It was reported in a Sports Car 365 article that Lamborghini wanted them to actually be their pro entry in GTD Pro next season, but it was understood that it would require factory Lamborghini drivers to be put into those driver slots, and that's not something that Paul Miller Racing was willing to do. They're quite pleased with Brian Sellers and Madison Snow in that ride, and they wanted to be able to retain them as drivers heading into the 2022 season. So it's not yet known what manufacturer Paul Miller Racing is going to be affiliated with in 2022 and beyond, but there is the potential that I think it was Acura that was rumored to potentially be involved with them. Team Hardpoint owner and driver Rob Farrell is considering Le Mans in 2022. The Team Hardpoint boss, the IMSA's Bob Aiken Award, which will be renamed the Aiken Bronze Cup as of 2022. And that awards an invite to go to the 24 Hours of Le Mans for the top finishing bronze GTD driver. Gar Robinson is going to use the LMP3 invite for use next season in his LMP2 ride. And something new for this season is IMSA actually received a third invite for the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and that's expected to be made available for any other interesting drivers. So, if you're a bronze driver and you're interested in heading to Le Mans, just hit them up. But no, it's understand it's going to be made available for any other interested bronze drivers if they want to take advantage of that invite. It's time to get hyped because we have some serious news coming down the pipeline. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, aka Team RLL, it's a mouthful, will be operating the BMW LMDH program in 2023, as well as their 2-car GTD Pro entry that's going to be starting next season in 2022. So some exciting stuff there. We're starting to get this news leak out now about LMDH. There's a bunch of news that we're going to talk about, and man, it's just so nice to see some of this news flowing through, and we're under 2 months until the start of the 2022 season. So it's going to come fast and furious here. BMW has been working with Team RLL since 2009, and this it was just deemed the next logical step. They've had that relationship going for so long, and it's been a fairly successful one for both sides. So Team RLL has been working with BMW, and they're going to be taking over the North American LMDH program for them. The team is going to run 2 LMDH cars in 2023, but it's a little bit undecided on the number of entries for GTD Pro in 2022. It looks like to start, they're going to have a 2-car entry for the Daytona 24 Hours, as well as the Sebring 12 Hours. But then at that point, they're going to shift some resources to go more heavy on the LMDH development. And it looks like they're planning to run a 1-car effort in GTD Pro after that. So, I mean, nothing's locked in there yet on that front, but it does look like they will be running 2 to start the season and then wind that down to a 1-car effort. Hendrick Motorsports, who is a team that we've been able to enjoy a little bit here in the 2021 season, of course, with their association with Action Express Racing. they are not yet ready to run their own IMSA entry. This is been a bit of a talking point for the last little while. They're saying that the NASCAR Gen 7 car development is just taking up too many resources at this time. Of course, NASCAR's their bread and butter, right? So it makes sense. But on the good news side, it does look like they are interested in running a similar entry to what they did in 2021, again in 2022, where they partnered up with Action Express Racing to field that number 48 Cadillac, only in the Michelin Endurance Cup races. But of course, they had some very popular drivers. They were definitely a popular team out there on the grid. So hopefully we're going to be able to see them come back here for the 2022 Endurance Cup season. In more silly season news, well, I mean, it is fully underway here as Meyer Shank Racing has announced its 2022 driver lineup. And I think they've got to be one of the first ones, if I'm not mistaken, to announce their full driver lineup here. As big news, former Mazda driver Ollie Jarvis is going to be making the move over to the Acura team and is going to be joined in the season-long drive by Tom Bloomquist, who raced in LMP2 for Jota in 2021. It was also announced that Helio Castroneves will be one of 2 drivers that joins the team for their Endurance Cup rounds, and it is a to-be-confirmed driver that's going to be in that 4th seat, although it has been rumored to be fellow Meyer Shank Racing IndyCar driver Simon Pagenaud. So we'll stay tuned for confirmation on that as the offseason rolls along. Pfaff Motorsports, of course, who we'll talk about again in a little bit, the winners of the GTD championship, are expected to announce their driver lineup for their expected move to GTD Pro during the Canadian company's end-of-year holiday party on December 14th. It was previously reported by Sportscar 365 that it's likely to feature an all-factory Porsche roster, so it looks like we might be saying goodbye to Zachary Robichon and Lawrence Vanthoor in that Porsche ride, but you never know. Things can always be up in the air until the last minute, so we'll have to see what the announcement is there and where those 2 drivers end up landing. Chip Ganassi Racing has confirmed it will add a second Cadillac DPI drive and feature a new 3-driver full-time lineup for its 2022 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship campaign. The current drivers are going to be retained on the other side in the 01 Cadillac, which feature current drivers Renger van de Zander, Sebastian Bourdais, Earl Bamber, and Alex Lynn. The AF Corsa Centilla Racing will bring the semi-regular return of Ferrari to the IMSA grid in 2022 with a Michelin Endurance Cup entry with their Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo entry. So it's going to be nice. Of course, there wasn't a full-time Ferrari entry on the grid here in 2021, so it's going to be nice to see the Italian manufacturer join the grid again in 2022. Wayne Taylor Racing is eyeing an entry in GTD in 2023 or 2024, so still a little bit preliminary there. But it has been there's some interesting rumors that have gone along with this. They may be looking to partner with another team in an entry as early as next season for the 2022 championship. It's also said that they would consider entering a GT3 in 2023, which perhaps GT3 or GTD in 2023, which perhaps coincides with when Lambo might be introducing its new GT3 car. So can you say GTD Pro entry, anyone? McLaren's Zach Brown mentioned in an interview with Racer that the company has an interest in an LMDH entry, and putting a little bit more focus back into the sports car racing side of things. He did mention that they're definitely noticing the number of manufacturers that are taking interest in that category and think it could be a very good way for another good racing series for them to have an entry in. So, fingers crossed that we just get to see more and more of these manufacturers jumping on board the LMDH category, because man, just imagine what the some of the big endurance races, especially, could look like in future years if you have the likes of BMW, Porsche, to go along with just the list could go on and on. But some exciting stuff there. Still all rumors, but still nice to speculate. Porsche revealed their new third generation Cayman GT4 car, which produces 75 more horsepower and has a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. The car has already been amalgamated and will be in use starting in 2022. So that's another new Porsche on the grid. And you know what? For only 229,000 USD, this could be yours. I'm sure we'll hopefully we'll be seeing some of these raced on the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. We've seen as actually news just came out sort of this morning. BMW is also going to be doing a revamp of their GT4 spec car as well. So some new cars coming here in the future. Some new things for drivers and teams to get used to, and who doesn't love seeing a new car release? It's I'm sure we all love to see it. So it'll be exciting to see at least the new Porsche Cayman 718 join up on the Michelin Pilot Challenge grid in 2022. Over the past weekend, in the 24 hours of Sebring, the BMW M4 GT3 was able to compete. They finished 17th overall in that race after they got caught up with in a handful of incidents. But all reports are that it was a successful running for that team and getting to iron out some of the problems that they had. It is going to be a joint effort between Team RLL and RMG in that race, and I believe there was on the entry list for that. I haven't looked at the finishing results and how many drivers actually raced it, but I think there was 6 drivers that were registered on that entry. So they had a good race in the 24 hours of Sebring, and the car looks bloody good in its North American debut. Minnesota-based JDC is going to be operating a Duquesne LMP3 for AL Motorsport in 2022. They are going to be partnering up in the Prototype Challenge with Alex Damalas and Alexander Kariba. The team has raced in IPC before in the Prototype Lights machinery, previously picking up 3 titles. And lastly, on the news front, Porsche has announced its goal of creating a single-make Porsche electric vehicle series. There has been news that the FIA was planning on its own electric GT championship, which is targeting a 2023 start, but Porsche has voiced that they're worrying that it might get a little bit too expensive due to the freedom and technical development which manufacturers will have in that series. So they are exploring making their own single-make series. Of course, it's not like they don't have any experience doing this themselves with the Porsche Cup that has been a pretty big success. So keep your eyes peeled for any news out of the Porsche camp on that. Hopping into coverage from the Petit Le Mans weekend, we are going to start off with just a little bit of support race action, and any pre-race news that kind of went down from practice and qualifying. The number 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus they started from the rear of the GTD class on Saturdays, Moto Petit Le Mans, after not meeting the minimum ride height in post-qualifying inspection. It was it really hurt because Jack Hawksworth had set the quickest time in qualifying, but they will now score last place qualifying points. They had qualified the car to start 7th in class in the first qualifying session, but they are now, of course, going to be starting from the back with no qualifying points. And what that does is it promoted the number 1 Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini of Brian Sellers to first place qualifying points, which was a big deal in that GTD championship, with Sellers and Madison Snow picking up 2 additional points. It was a very close championship battle in GTD, and any of those points, all of those points mattered. Felipe Nasser put the number 31 Action Express Racing Cadillac on pole and gained 11 points, which, remember that number because it's going to come up later on. On the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac, who qualified in 7th. The number 16 Wright Motorsport Porsche in GTD remarkably made it out for qualifying after a hefty practice crash caused them to bring in a spare chassis from their shop in Ohio. It was a brilliant effort from that team to get that car prepared and ready for the race, but they did a great job and made the most of a bad situation here. And lastly, some good news here coming on the broadcast front, as Shea Adam returned to the pit lane for the first time since the 2020 Rolex 24 at Daytona. Of course, they've been doing sort of, all of their interviews remotely via phones, and it was tough for him, but it was so nice to have Shea back on pit lane, being able to run up and down, get all the breaking news stories during the race. It was very nice to have, and really looking forward to having them back for a full season here in 2022. All right, let's hop into a race recap of the 2021 Motul Petit Le Mans. It was a cold one at Road Atlanta, as ambient and track temperatures, they plummeted to 39 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 4 degrees Celsius by the checkered flag. And this made it the coldest race of the season since the nighttime hours of course, the 24-hour at Daytona back in January. And it really did affect some of the ending stints of the race, with just drivers not being able to get the tire temps in the car in the tire temps up that they needed to. There were drivers that were losing up to 8 seconds on their outlap after putting a new set of tires on. So this really did come down. This really did influence some of the race finishes, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But for the most part, it was a clean start to the race with no real opening incidents to mention. Right at the drop of the green flag, it wasn't until around the 1 hour mark where the number 18 Hendrick Motorsports entry loses it out of the final corner, and they got into the wall pretty hard. That LMP2 was done for the rest of the race after that, and it also brought out the first safety car of the race. A safety car restart caused an incident at the hour-and-a-half mark when the 83 Win Autosport LMP3 was rear-ended going into turn 10A. Remember that corner as well. This is going to be a talking point as we go on here, which prompted another full course yellow due to debris. They ended up cutting a tire down, and there was some carbon fiber and just debris on the track. So the safety car was brought out yet again. Just shy of the 2 hour mark, the championship contender number 1 Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini, they were caught up in an incident which coming out of turn 10B, which caused damage to the right front tire, and ultimately they lost 14 laps in that. From this point on, that's an uphill battle, losing 14 laps, and especially when you're in such a close championship fight with that Pfaff Motorsport entry. So it was a little bit sad to see. I would have loved to see that GTD championship come down to the wire, and we know Paul Miller Racing, they've been quick all season long. So it's disappointing that we weren't going to be able to see them up at the front fighting for that the victory and the championship. But at the 2 hour and 20 minute mark, the number 12 GTD of Frankie Montecalvo made contact with an LMP that was exiting the pits. This is a common theme that really carries on into the back half of this race. Pit entry here at Petit Le Mans or in Petit Le Mans is very difficult. And especially so in the evening, and that will rear its head yet again in not too long here. Just shy of the 4 hour mark, the number 7 LMP3 is, of course, off in the S's. And they went deep into the tires, bringing out a safety car. And this was the trigger for the biggest incident in this race, as the restart that ensued caused the big one right on the 6 hour mark, heading into turn A. If you have not seen the video of it, it's not too difficult to find out there on YouTube. But there was a big stack up that led to a very large accident, some hard hits, most notably the number 3 Corvette. In a bit of a scary incident there. But it ended up being race ending for 6 drivers, including the number 3 Corvette, as well as in GTD, the number 96 Turner Motorsport entry, the number 57 entry, the number 32 Mercedes, the number 14 Acura, the number 70 McLaren, the only McLaren that was on the grid, as well as the number 19 Lamborghini. This crash led to a 35-minute full course yellow, and there was... Anybody who was watching during the race, you would have saw the amount of quick dry that they were putting down on the surface there. They were painting the track white with that stuff. It was a little bit concerning going back to green, heading into of course, the heavy braking zone of turn 10A, and it was a little bit concerning seeing them go through that for the first few laps. But they did all the drivers did a great job of navigating that safely, and luckily there wasn't another incident as a result of that. Also, shout out to the track crew. They did a great job of cleaning this up. If you go back and watch the video, there is debris absolutely everywhere. It was actually surprising that it didn't lead to a red flag condition. But the track crew did a great job. They cleared up all the carnage and were able to get things back underway after not a terribly long full course yellow. As I mentioned earlier, there were plenty of incidents in the second half of the race with drivers exiting the pit lane on cold tires. Of course, second half of the race, this is where we started to see the sun go down and the incident count start to go up here, as there were multiple, most notably DPIs, that were having a lot of trouble with this. The 0-1 and the 5 DPI, as well as the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing entry. They were all victims of cold tires in the late going and having a little bit of an adventure off track. But after a couple laps, of course, and the tires come up to temp, they were a lot better. But as I mentioned, they were seeing lap times losing as much as 8 seconds as what they would sort of expect to run on a typical outlap. So it was affecting them, and it really did affect strategy in the late going with some teams opting to not change tires for the last stint, changing up tire strategies, put them a little bit off sequence, things like that. So it was a very fun last couple of hours to watch from the strategy perspective. Overall, though, incident-wise, things were a lot cleaner in the second half of that race. But there was an interesting incident at the 6 hour mark of the race, where at this point in the race, it was fully nighttime. It was dark out there on track, and there were 2 LMP3 cars that lost all electrical power pretty much at the same time. And they were just sitting on track in the darkness. They had no lights on. They were unable to move. Even it seemed like the emergency light systems weren't working on those cars. So it was a little bit of a scary moment there, as cars were getting slowed down for the full course yellow that had ensued. But Luckily, they were somewhat off to the side of the track, and there was no incidents that resulted from those. It led to a fairly short full course yellow, and then they were back at it. In the final hour, though, if you weren't able to watch Petit Le Mans, I would highly recommend going on the IMSA YouTube channel and just, if you only want to watch an hour of it, go watch the final hour of this race, as there was an amazing battle that unfolded between Felipe Nasr and Ricky Taylor for the DPI championship, and it culminated in a last lap turn 10 send by Ricky Taylor. Unfortunately, he was a little bit too far back to really make a good go at this send, but I mean, the send, he bolted up the inside of Nasr, who kind of knew it was coming. Ricky kind of skidded across through turn A and then was off in the gravel through turn B. He kept control of the car and didn't spin in the gravel or anything, but it did mean that Felipe Nasr was able to cross the line in second place and lock up that DPI championship. Ricky Taylor crossed the line in third, even after that trip through the gravel. Overall, though, it was the DPI entry of Mazda Motorsports in that number 55 car, driven by Ollie Jarvis, Harry Tinknell, and Jonathan Bomarito, that won from the number 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac and the number 10 Konica Minolta Acura. The other DPI finishers in this race were the number 48 Allied Cadillac, the 01 Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac, and the number 60 Meyer Shank Racing entry. They finished 11 laps down, though, after having some issues midway through the race. In LMP2, it was the Tower Motorsport entry of John Ferrano, Gabriel Aubry, and James French that won that category, from the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports car and the number 11 Win Autosport entry. We'll talk about the finish of that race here in a moment. Other finishers from this class, there was only one other, and it was the United Autosports number 22. In LMP3, it was Gar Robinson, Felipe Fraga, and Scott Andrews that took the win in the number 74 Riley Motorsports entry. The other podium finishers that survived were the number 3 JR3 entry and the number 91 Riley Motorsports entry. There was a couple other survivors as well in what was a very large LMP3 class here for Petit Le Mans. And the other survivors included the number 40 Fast MD Racing entry, as well as the number 747 Motorsports car, and the number 2 United Autosport entry. As we cross over into the GT categories, in GTLM, it was Cooper McNeil, Mathieu Yamin, and Matt Campbell who crossed the line first in their number 79 WeatherTech Racing Porsche. In second place, it was the number 97 WeatherTech Racing entry that gave WeatherTech Racing a 1-2 finish in what is everybody's last race in GTLM. And then rounding off the podium was the number 24 BMW Team RLL entry. It's worth noting that with just a few laps to go, the number 4 Corvette was forced to retire from some late damage that they sustained. So a little bit disappointing that neither of the Corvettes were able to finish. Of course, the number 3 being taken out in that very large crash earlier on in the race. And then lastly, in GTD, it was Roman DeAngelis, Ross Gunn, and Ian James who took the win in the number 23 Heart of Racing Aston Martin. They edged out the number 9 Pfaff Motorsport car, as well as the number 12 Vassar Sullivan entry. The rest of the finishers in this class were the number 28 Allegra Motorsports Mercedes, the number 16 Wright Motorsports entry, Team Magnus with Archangel, number 44, the Paul Miller Racing number 1 car, who ended up being 13 laps down. They had actually clawed back a handful of these laps at one point in the race, but they ended up losing a few more laps in the later going. And then the Team Hardpoint number 88 and the NTE Sport number 42 were the other two remaining finishers. Considerable laps down in this category. In post-race notes, it was Jonathan Bomarito said that the race-winning number 55 Mazda got its 3 laps back. Yeah, they also fell 3 laps down very early in the race, but they got them back really quickly. Thanks to, of course, there was a number of full course cautions in the first half of this race, mostly brought out by LMP3s. But these cautions allowed the Multimatic squad to just crawl back into contention and ultimately pick up the win after they had to make a lengthy pit stop early on for a spark plug change. A post-race time penalty we mentioned here in the LMP2 finishing results. There was a little bit of an asterisk here. There was a post-race time penalty that denied the PR1 Matheson Motorsports LMP2 victory after they rebounded from an accident in the second hour where they got into the number 83 Win Autosport LMP3 that resulted in nose damage and put the car 1 lap down. This, of course, this time penalty gave the race win to the Tower Motorsports entry. But it wasn't all bad for the PR1 Matheson Motorsports bunches. They did end up picking up the LMP2 Drivers' Championship, so everybody had something to celebrate at the end of this one. It was nice for Ben Keating to pick up that championship, as this is his first season-long IMSA title after, man, I don't even know how many years he's been trying for that one. As just mentioned, the race featured a total of 10 full course cautions. A majority of them, half of them, it's noted here, were for incidents involving LMP3 cars. You know, in the last episode, we said it was going to be a large grid of LMP3s, and definitely led to an increase in incidents here. There was a total of 3 hours of running time behind the safety car in this one. In GTLM, there were team orders in the closing laps when the 2 Porsche WeatherTech Racing entries were 1 and 2. And the team orders were to give Cooper McNeil and the number 79 WeatherTech Racing Porsche the final GT Le Mans class victory. Kevin Estor, who was driving the number 97 entry, he had to slow up in the final couple of laps to give up a nearly 15-second lead and surrender that first place. It still was a 1-2 finish for this team, and it was the first Porsche sweep in the class since last year's season-ending 12 Hours of Sebring. That was also the last race where 2 Porsches had competed in GTLM, so it was good to see there. And you'll remember 12 Hours of Sebring last year was a great sight as well, with that Porsche 1-2. Lots of fond memories from that race. Saturday's race marked the first time in recent memory that a Corvette did not finish the race. It's been a long time. And the number 4, we mentioned it, they had to retire in the last few laps. They actually had a run-in with the Mazda DPI that ended up winning the race, and it ultimately broke its suspension. It broke the Corvette's suspension. It didn't really look like that big of a hit or that big a contact between those 2 drivers, but clearly this was enough to finish off that Corvette in what is its last race in GTLM competition. And then lastly, it was Patrick Long's last race as a full-time driver. He did kind of leave the door open to potentially returning for maybe a couple of events here or there, but he's done racing full-time in IMSA. And now finally, the season-ending points standings. It was Pipo Derani and Felipe Nasr that gave Action Express Racing its 5th IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship title in 8 years. That's pretty dominant right there. It also marked Nasr's 2nd Drivers' Championship and Durrani's long-awaited first season-long title in IMSA competition. So big congratulations to those 2, as well as Action Express Racing. Cadillac claimed its 3rd championship title in the last 5 years of DPI competition, breaking a 2-year championship streak from Acura. who finished in second place, 113 points behind. LMP2 saw Ben Keating and Mikael Jensen take the championship in the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports entry. They edged out the number 11 Win Autosport entry by 136 points. In LMP3, it was the number 74 Riley Motorsports entry of Gar Robinson, who clinched the championship by just starting the race. They were 186 points ahead of the number 54 Core Autosport car when it was all said and done. It should also be noted that the number 74 was also helped to the championship by semi-regulars Felipe Fraga and Scott Andrews. In GTLM, it was the number 3 Corvette of Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor who edged out their teammates in the number 4 by 101 points. And then finally in GTD, it was of course the number 9 Pfaff Motorsport Porsche of Lawrence Van Thor and Zachary Robichon, who beat out the number 1 Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini by 121 points. In the Michelin Endurance Cup standings, it was the number 10 Konica Minolta Acura beating the number 55 Mazda by 6 points in the DPI ranks. In LMP2, the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports entry picked up another championship, edging out the number 8 Tower Motorsport team by 3 points. In LMP3, it was not even close, as the number 74 Riley Motorsports entry dominated, beating out their teammate, the number 91 Riley Motorsports entry, by 22 points. 22 points in the Michelin Endurance Cup is a lot of points. They absolutely dominated this in 2021. In GTLM, the number 4 Corvette did end up taking home one of the titles as they beat out the number 3 Corvette by 4 points. And then finally in GTD, it was the number 16 Wright Motorsport Porsche who edged out the number 9 Pfaff Motorsport entry by just 2 points. In other racing going on this coming weekend, November 28th is going to see Super GT in Fuji. And that's really about it. We're at that point in the season where it's the off season for so many of the racing series. There's still some F1 to watch, as well as, there's a little bit of racing on here and there. But in case if you need to get your racing fix, I will highly recommend heading over to the IMSA YouTube channel. You can watch back races from this season. You can watch back the support series. Personally, my favorite racing to watch this year has been the Mazda Inimitsu MX-5 Cup. I would highly recommend. Very easy to digest races there, about 45 minutes in length. Highly recommend going and checking that out. It was super fun to watch the entire season. But of course, we're about just under 2 months away from the Daytona 24 Hours, so the off season is getting into full swing. And with that, it will wrap up this episode of the Off in the S's podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button on your favorite podcast app to never miss a new episode. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can find the link to our Patreon in the show notes. And we will definitely be back before Christmas, mid-December-ish, to update you on any more off-season news as it comes in. And, like I said, it's not going to be that long before we're kicking off the 2022 season in Daytona. We'll also be back in early January for a preseason sort of primer podcast, get you up to speed on what the grid is going to look like for the season. If you're new to the IMSA Sports Car Championship, we'll give a quick breakdown of what to expect schedule-wise. Everything like that will head your way in early January. But for now, thanks for tuning in. I hope everybody enjoys their off season and doesn't go off in the S's.